everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So let us start our lecture. Today we are going to do writing task 1. How many of you have already attempted a writing task with me before? I think Deepam, Shan, and Pranav have, right? Athira is new.
Yes.
Okay, so I will first of all explain how you write a task. Then you will have to write a task in the class, and then we will discuss it finally. All right, so let me just share my screen with you. Second. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So in your writing section for IELTS, you will have 2 different tasks to do. Okay, the first one is a report. That is what we are going to do today. Second one is an essay. Now, in your report and for your essay, total you will get 60 minutes to do this. Okay, your essay will be written in 40 minutes and your report will be written in 20 minutes. It can be written in less if you practice enough. Now, today, let us focus on report alone. So, for report writing, you need to know that if you're given 20 minutes, you have to write at least 150 words. Okay, now this is the minimum limit. You can even write 500 words if you want to, though I would not suggest that. Just make sure that you are exceeding 150 words. So how do you utilize these 20 minutes? First of all, you're going to spend at least 3 to 4 minutes on planning. You need to know what you're going to write. That is very important. Do not just start, like once you get the task, do not just start writing altogether at that very moment. First of all, plan what you're going to write in the different paragraphs, understand what the question is, and then start writing. Okay, then spend 10 to 12 minutes on actually writing the task, because you only have to write minimum of 150 words. So let's say normally all the students write around 170 words just to be on the safer side. If you're going to write around 170 words, it's less than 1 A4 sheet. It will not take you more than 10 to 12 minutes to actually write it all out. But what happens after is more important. You need to spend at least 2 to 3 minutes on revising what you have written. This is very important. You need to take out your spelling errors. You need to take out your grammatical errors before the invigilator gets your paper. So this period is just as important as your planning is, and just as important as your writing is. Okay. Before I explain you the structure of how you write one, there are also 4 parameters you need to keep in mind when you're going to attempt your IELTS test for your writing. The 4 parameters are, the first is lexical resources, which is, sorry, why did this happen? So as I was saying, the 4 parameters are, the first one is lexical resources, which is vocab. So lexical resources or vocabulary, they are going to test you on, or judge you basically, on what a variety of words you're going to use. Every single task you're going to get will have certain set of words that they're going to repeat. For example, they're going to figures about children. They're going to figures about men and women. Maybe they'll be talking about different kind of nations. So you need to know and have a certain extent of vocabulary so that you do not repeat a certain word again and again. This also refers to that not all of your sentences should look similar. What happens in report writing is that you're given a figure, basically. Okay, I know most of you know this already, but I'll just say it right now. So in report writing, you get kind of like a figure. Yeah, so a figure as in a graph, a bar chart, a line graph, maybe a map. So these kind of things are given, a flow chart. So when you are given such kind of figures, what you have to do is you have to explain those, diagrams into words. When you're doing that, you will see, because you will be describing hardcore facts. For example, if you are talking about a line graph, okay, and the figures for those are kind of like this, okay, and they are for 2 different years for 2 different nations. You will be repeating certain vocabulary, like, okay, the figures were this much in this year, there were this much in this year, there were this much in this year. If all your sentences look the same, then your lexical resources, your vocab score is going to go down. So make sure your sentences look different. You're using different ways of giving that information. You need to make sure that no word or no sentence structure is being repeated. That is very important. The second is coherence and cohesion. Coherence and cohesion basically is a big word that we use to say that whatever you're writing for essay and for report, it should be smooth. Every sentence should be connected to the one before. It should not be very abrupt. You need to use conjunctions. For example, you need to start your body paragraph 1 with saying to begin with. Then you need to end it with overall. You need to use words like thus, furthermore, in addition to, moreover. So these things actually make your They make your report more smooth. So that is very important as well. The next thing that you'll be judged on will be grammatical accuracy. You probably already know this. You need to use the correct tenses. If the figures are from the past, that is before 2023, you're going to use a past tense. If they are from the future, for example, they're talking about predictions they have made for 2050 or 2070, then you need to use a future tense. You have to use words like will, shall, predicted, or depicted, anything like that. So you have to use words like that. That is very important, that you stick to a certain vocabulary that suits the year that they're given for. Last and also the least is task achievement. Task achievement is actually pretty easy for a report writing. All you have to make sure for a task achievement in report writing is that you do not give any inputs from your own side. In report, as the word says, you're going to report what happened in the graph, in the picture, in the diagram. You're not going to include anything from your own side. That is something that should be avoided. There are certain instances when you are not given enough content, as in if the graph is just too simple, it just has like 4 or 5 things to say, then you might include something from your own end, like, saying like, why did people want to give us smoking? Or maybe, why do you think the water needs to be clean? Something very simple. And not something that carries your own opinion, but something that can be actually, kind of like inferred from the graph. That kind of thing can be included, but try to avoid that. Always only give hardcore facts in your report writing. Now for the structure, there are going to be 4 paragraphs in all of your reports. You can actually make 5, but you cannot go less than 4. 4 are the minimum requirement. The first is going to be an introduction. The second and third are going to be body paragraph 1 and 2, and the last will be an overall statement. The overall statement can also come before the body paragraph, or it can come after all the body paragraphs. It is your wish where you want to place it. But introduction should definitely be the first one. Now, in the introduction, there are 3 things you need to definitely mention. The first is what kind of chart it is. The second is what it is talking about. And third, anything that you convert from it, like anything major observation. That's it. Now, the observation part is not compulsory for you to add, but I do recommend that you add it, because then your introduction will be a little bit longer. It will be more than 1 sentence, because what type of chart it is and what it is depicting can be actually told in 1 sentence. For example, you are given 2 pie charts that are describing the ratio of men and women working in different sectors for different years. In that case, you can literally write the first sentence in and conclude both of those points in just 1 go. The given pie charts depict the different figures for men and women working in different sectors during this and that year. Right, so that was just 1 sentence. It is not bad to write just 1 sentence for introduction, but try to add something more. Add an observation like, in this year, in this particular sector, the women worked the hardest, or the more women were inclined towards working in this sector for this year than men were. Okay, even something like that will work really well for introduction. Then for your overall statement, if you're going to write it right after introduction, the first thing you need to know, overall is not equal to conclusion. As in, you're not going to summarize anything, as there is nothing to summarize. It's just a report. There are only figures here, hardcore facts, as I said before. So you cannot say something like from your own opinion. You cannot use words like in conclusion, to summarize, or anything. You will only use overall, this particular word, put a comma here, and then give 2 statements or just 1 statement. You can talk about the highest or the lowest figures here. Like men have the highest figures in this case, women have the highest figures in this case. Or, why is this happening? Or you can actually say something very simple, like from the overall, it can be released that men overall worked more hours than women did in this particular year. Okay, so it can be just another observation. Now, this should not have been repeated in your introduction or in your body paragraph. Make sure that this statement is different. Second of all, do not give any specific figures. Okay, we avoid specific figures as in numbers in your overall, because then it doesn't look like something that you write at the very end. It looks like something that is part of the body paragraph. Overall is different. Thus, you should not give specific figures in this one. For your body paragraphs, you're basically just going to divide the information into 2 parts, and then you're going to write it down. The first part will come in body paragraph 1, and the second one in body paragraph 2. An easy way to divide information for pie charts and for bar graphs or line graphs even would be that For body paragraph 1, you talk about the highest and the lowest figures in detail, and everything else can be covered in body paragraph 2. All right. Are there any questions for overall structure, the parameters, or how you actually do a task 1?
Ma'am, is it mandatory to have two body paragraphs?
Oh, wait. I can't hear you. Can you give me a second? I should hear you. Hello, I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, Deepam, you can ask the question.
Ma'am, is it mandatory to have two body paragraphs?
Yes, absolutely. You need at least 2 body paragraphs. There are times when we see in textbooks and even in sample answers that there is only 1 body paragraph written, but I strongly advise against it. They want 2 body paragraphs from us in the IELTS exam, so we should give them at least 2 body paragraphs.
And also, ma'am, you said no figure in the conclusion part. So
Yes.
can we include some figures in the introduction part?
Yes, you can include figures in introduction, but to be really honest, there is no need to include them. You can say something like if there is a certain graph that is talking about overall or total sum, they have depicted it in a different way, then you can include that in the introduction. That is completely fine. But in most cases, there is no need to include. And if you see that, okay, it is something that can be covered in the body paragraph and you have something extra to say in the introduction, then I would suggest you don't include it, but it's not wrong to include it. And overall, you should definitely avoid it. Do not add any specific figures in your overall.
Ma'am, then what essentially happens is introduction and the conclusion part almost becomes the same. I mean, becomes the same.
Oh no. So here's the thing. It would only become same if it's just a very simple graph. If it's a very simple graph, in that case, you can add actually the highest and the lowest in your overall, and you don't need to add an observation in the introduction. In other instances, there are always multiple things that are being talked about. There are going to be multiple figures for different nations. You can talk about one nation in the beginning and you can talk about others in the overall. Or maybe there are going to be different years. So you can talk about 1 year in the first one in the introduction, or maybe an overall picture. And then in the other one, you can talk about specific graphs or specific nations. So if we actually look at different questions, you will see that the highest and the lowest figures are not the only things that are being covered. There are also you can talk about trends, like what was it increasing or decreasing for all the nations, or did some nations fluctuate too much, or maybe they were just stagnant with their figures. So these kind of things can also be mentioned in your introduction and overall. Okay. Is it a bit more clear now, or do you want me to give you an example while looking at a question?
Ma'am, I got it. I think when we'll practice, will be more clear.
All right. Any other questions? If you're confused about anything, you should ask it right now, because after this, we're going to attempt the question. Then you will have to write it right then and there. No? All right then. So today we are going to do flowcharts. That was the major focus for today's class, as we did, I think, by pie charts last time. So today is going to be flowchart, process chart, or cyclic processes. For these, I have given you a sample introduction and a sample overall statement. You can use this one, or you can make one of your own. That is completely fine. The only thing is you should follow the same thing as I said before. It should conclude what kind of chart it is. It should include what it is talking about and maybe an extra sentence. All right. In your overall, do not mention any specific figures. For flowcharts, there are no figures, so you don't have to worry about that. So an introduction for a flowchart would be something like the given flowchart illustrates how, let's say, anything. Plastic bottles are being recycled step by step. It is clear that there are several main steps in the process, from the first step, and to the final, that was whatever the stage is given. In the overall, you can say it can be seen that the process of this is a complex process involving many stages. So these are two different statements, so you can make that can be kind of fixed if you want to use the same one over and over again for all kinds of flowchart. This is very flexible, so you can change it according to your convenience, and you can take a screenshot if you want to of this. Now, yes.
One question. I mean, the conclusion, is it fine if you just add one sentence like here?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So your conclusion can be one sentence. Your introduction can also be only one sentence. And this is only for report. For essay, it is very different. But for report, yes, it can be, both of them can be one sentence. But I always say your introduction should be two sentences. Like it is preferred, though one sentence will not be considered wrong. Okay. So do not
Okay.
worry if you only write like one single statement in your overall statement, it will be considered correct. They're not expecting anything more from you.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Now let's look at a question. So this is a question for today. As you can see, it's sort of like a cyclic process. So this chart below shows the process of waste papers recycling. And these are all the details that are given here. Make sure, I'm going to repeat it one more time. Your vocabulary means your lexical resources. They mean that you should not repeat the same word over and over again. Just because it is mentioned in the question doesn't mean that you have to repeat it in your answer. So use a variety of words for everything that is given here. All right. So now I'll give you guys exactly 20 minutes to do this. If you have any questions, you can ask them anytime. So your time starts now. We'll start discussing it at 9:40 exactly. All right, now the time is up. Who all have done and who are left still?
Ma'am, I'm done.
Okay,
Done,
Deepak,
ma'am.
done.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good to know. So everyone is done writing. Let's start with the discussion now. First of all, I want to know how was the introduction like? Did you use the one that I gave or did anyone write something different?
Ma'am, little bit
The
different.
flow chart show that how the waste paper is recycled.
The flow chart shows that. After that, can you repeat it again, Akshay?
How waste paper is recycled.
Okay, that is good too. Anything else like that, is it? That one sentence is your introduction. That works too.
Yes, ma'am.
The given process cycle illustrates step-by-step process of waste paper reusing.
Given show, can you repeat it one more time, Sean?
The given process chart illustrates step-by-step process of waste paper reusing.
Okay, yeah, that works. Waste paper reusing actually will mean something different. Go for recycling here. In
Okay,
this
ma'am.
sentence, because you are stating the process, and the thing is, I get it. Why would you would like to go for a different word? But recycling is the major keyword here, and reusing means something different, right?
In Dawn, ma'am, in conclusion, I have written that discarded paper, so I can use that in introduction as well. Discarded paper
Is
recycling.
the conclusion right after this, or is it written after body paragraphs?
Ma'am, in conclusion, I have written overall the cycle of discarded paper
Oh, no, I
recycling.
get that. But have you written your conclusion as in the overall statement before the body paragraphs or after the body paragraphs?
After the body paragraph, ma'am.
In that case, yes, you can, because we need to at least space out different words, right?
Yes, ma'am. That's why only I'm saying.
So that will work. You can repeat those words, but stick with recycling instead of reusing in this word, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
And then I guess Deepam was also going to say something.
Yes, ma'am. The introduction I have written that the given cyclic chart demonstrates how waste papers are recycled through step-by-step.
One second. Shan, do you mind muting yourself? Okay, Deepam, you may continue.
Ma'am, I have written that the given cyclic chart demonstrates how waste papers are recycled through a step-by-step process.
Okay, yeah, that works too. So anyone else who's written something different, someone who wants to narrate what they have written? Till now, everyone has written a pretty good introduction. Introduction is pretty basic for a report. It is the easiest part. No questions there. Now let's move on to the major crux. Oh, I see Pranav has unmuted himself.
I haven't written differently, but I need my introduction to be checked.
Okay.
The given flowchart gives an idea how the used papers are reused after processing. It is clear that this process involves step-by-step methodology to produce new papers from used papers.
The thing is, you said idea, right? Idea sounds a little too, how do I say it, not as sophisticated as the rest of the words you've used. So maybe go for another word, maybe a description.
Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am,
All
is
right.
there a better way that we could have introduced this?
Oh no, actually your introduction is a pretty sample and it is good one. So you don't have to worry that you have to use a very sophisticated language or very, uptight sentences to in just your introduction. The major vocabulary that will be judged will be in the body paragraphs. So you don't have to worry about the introduction that much. As long as you are not making any grammatical errors or spelling errors and it makes sense.
Ma'am, second line I have written that recycling involves the use of both man and machine to achieve the final product.
Yeah, that works too. Mhm. Now let's move on to the discussion for body paragraphs. Now in body paragraphs, I believe everyone made two. I don't think there was any need for a third body paragraph in this. Anyone who made a third body paragraph? No? Okay. So let us start with the first body paragraph discussion. In the process where there are only few steps, as you can see, there are only what, 4, 5, 6 steps given here. You can actually start with firstly, secondly, next, after that, following which in the end. This is like the perfect way you can do a 6-step process. Okay, but that was just for my take. Now I want to listen to what you guys have written. Let's start with Athita actually.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Athita, you're audible.
Yes. I wrote that the waste paper recycling process consists of 6 steps.
Hmm.
The steps are separated by commas, not that specific.
Sorry, Athita, can you repeat that? They are separated by what?
Commas only.
Oh, okay. So you did not make like a proper body paragraph, but you explain them very quickly.
Yes. After that, I explained the steps.
Okay, so that is not usually how we do it. Let us listen to other students how they have done, and then I'll show you sample answer. Okay, I think you'll get an idea of how to write a task then. All right. So let's start with Pranav.
The major source to initiate good and new papers comes from paper used from public papers banks. Sorry, public papers banks and from business where paper consumption is high, comma. All these papers are collected and sorted manually. After selectively bifurcating the used papers which is suitable for recycling, the bulk is conveyed to paper mill. Body 2. Operations in paper mill involves cleaning where extra stuffs other than paper is removed and then grinded. Further process includes de-inking. Here, colored mix and glue are eliminated using chemicals. Finally, the mix is sent to paper machine where finished product is obtained. Overall, it can be seen that process of reusing waste paper is a complex process involving several steps.
Okay, Pranav, did you notice one thing? You said paper at least 10 times.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if you wanted to, search for synonyms for paper, the thing is you won't find an exact synonym, but you can alter your sentence to fit other words. For example, you could have said the documents collected from public paper banks, or you could say the sheets after they are sorted by hand are then graded into different categories. Those that are, graded unsuitable are removed. Okay, so you can even avoid using the noun altogether. After that, you could have used words like sheets or pages, things like that. Files could have also worked.
Yes, ma'am. I too thought this, but at that time I didn't got any synonym for that. But I got it.
Okay. So in this case, there are often times when there are words that we find hard to, actually think of a synonym right then and there. But you can use, think of words that are kind of similar and they mean the same thing, or at least they denote the same thing. So those words will work too. All right, so now let's listen to, otherwise, whatever you've written was pretty good. So don't need to worry about that. It was just about the synonyms. Now, Deepam, can I hear what you have written?
Yes, ma'am. First, paper collection is done from public paper banks and businesses that is thrown away. This then goes through a sorting mechanism, mostly by hand after it is graded accordingly. The unsuitable ones are removed. Next, it is transported to the paper mill for further processing.
Okay, Akshay, sorry, Deepam, in this, there's only one thing. You've used many of the exact words as they are in the question, right? Businesses from waste paper collection, then sorting, unsuitable, also transportation. Try to use a few different words. Like, some of them, I know they have to be similar, but still others can be, changed. So try to use like their synonyms at least. It is very important that you show your vocabulary in this case, because in such a flowchart where you are only given pictures, you're only given words and there are no pictures, they already expect the student to use the exact same sentence that is given there. If you do actually do that, then your lexical resource score band will actually go very low, and we want to avoid that. So do not use the exact sentence that is given. Use a few synonyms and do a little bit more paraphrasing.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sure, I got it.
Then who else wants to go? Shan, what about you?
Yes, ma'am. So body one, all in all, the cycle starts with unused paper collection from public paper banks and from businesses. Secondly, it is separated by hands in which paper are graded well and unjust paper are thrown. Next, it is transported to paper mill. Thereon, it is taken to cleaning. In this step, the discarded paper is brought for cleaning and pulping, and removal of other materials like staples are also take place in this very step. Further on, de-inking is done so as to clean the inks and glue. Eventually, it is taken to paper mill, paper making machine, where machine manufactures paper to be used.
Okay, Shan, that was pretty good. Oh, again, just do not try not to repeat the word paper so much. Otherwise, also
Yes, ma'am,
use
I
a
got
few,
that.
yeah, the same thing as others. Try to work on the vocabulary. All
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
now let me just share like a sample answer to this. It is not the perfect answer, but it is basically will show you kind of like a structure that you can follow when you're going to write your exam. Now, in this, we'll start reading from the first one. I see it because we have a few new students here. So, if we look at the introduction itself, the flowchart shows how waste paper is recycled. A very simple one. You could have ended it here. You can also add other steps. So, it is clear there are 6 distinct stages in this process, from the initial connection of waste paper to the eventual production of usable paper. This is the kind of similar to what I gave you, so you can use this too. Then at the first stage, let's say firstly, in the paper recycling process, waste paper is collected either from paper banks where members of public leave their used paper. They have given extra information. You can avoid that if you want to, or you can add something like this if you are falling short of words. As you can see, it's only 160 words long. I believe half of you, what you have written, will be barely 150 words from what I hear. Okay, or you can say that or directly used from the businesses. This paper is then sorted out by hand and separated. Then, this is the second word they have used to combine their sentences and separated according to its grade, with any paper that is not suitable for recycling being removed. Now, in this, what I wanted to mention was you can see they made a very long sentence and it sounds very different from what is written here. They have explained it in detail, and that is what helps you improve your lexical resources and also your coherence and cohesion. So that is what the examiner is looking forward from you. They want you to use these words, but actually use either a few synonyms or actually explain that a little bit more in detail, because there are no pictures in this flowchart, right? It is not a graphical depiction of the process. They have given you straight out words. In that case, you really need to make sure your coherence and cohesion and your vocabulary sources really they need to stand out. Otherwise, you will get a low band score. You need to notice that your essay is already 60 or 65% of your score. So this is only 35% of your grade for writing. But in this, if they're facing, going to put extra emphasis on your vocabulary, then your score band could go very low. In that case, in questions like this, where there are no pictures, just focus more on the vocabulary part and use more, unique sentences, kind of like that. Okay, then you can take a screenshot of this if you want to. But basically, I want to emphasize on the different words they have used to combine the sentences and also
the ones that I said firstly, secondly, or you can say then next, following this, furthermore, after this, then at last you can say finally. Also add a conclusion. That is missing. The conclusion can be something simple like for all the steps in this flow chart that were given were necessary, or the one that I think Deepan spoke, that was also good, where he mentioned something about how both human and machines are used to recycle the waste paper. That can also be used. Both are great sentences. You need to write a conclusion or an overall sentence in this because it does carry a certain weightage to it. Are there any doubts in today's task for this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
I mean, de-inking, I have written that using chemicals, it has been de-inked. So
Mhm.
there is no chemicals, the word chemical has been used in the question. But can
Yeah,
we use
so
that?
the thing is, as I said, this is like just a sample answer. This is not the perfect answer. I would personally
No,
give it
ma'am.
a.
I have
Mhm.
written a chemical.
You have written
Is
chemical.
yes,
I
ma'am.
did not hear it.
Is that okay?
Chemical where?
Ma'am, because de-inking can only be done using chemicals. So I
Oh
have
yeah,
written that.
there. Yeah, there it is okay.
And ma'am, what is the actual meaning of pulping?
Pulping, how do I explain it? So imagine fruit pulps, you see, when you turn it into like a big mush,
I mean, like
the paper, and then all the other materials are removed. So consider it, you cannot use a synonym in this case because pulping is the only word I know actually for pulping. But they basically turn the whole material into a mush and then they make all the other stuff from it. I think that's what it means. I might be wrong here. I'm not a science student.
synonymly, I have used grinding instead of pulping.
Oh no, grinding cannot be correct because you grind hard subjects. You cannot grind paper.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions from anyone else?
Ma'am, I wanted to ask, ma'am, in the sample answer,
Hmm.
they have used some sentences that is not directly given in the flowchart. For example, where members of the public or
Yes, yes.
directly from businesses. So
Hmm.
this information is not given. So is this correct?
So the thing is, as just like how Pranav did it, the thing is sometimes the certain things are kind of like you can already imagine it. Yeah, the paper that is collected from paper banks will be obviously something that will be collected from the paper, or sorry, from the public. As they say, the word is public paper banks, right? And the other thing is directly from the businesses. They are mentioning businesses there. Right. So they have just basically elongated that sentence and used other words to emphasize certain things. So that is the kind of trick you need to use to make sure your vocabulary is being fulfilled.
Ma'am, here members of the public means it doesn't make sense to me. Members of the public.
Members of the public just means civilians, actually. It just means public. It's not talking about a post. It's not talking about something, very erudite or anything. It literally just means civilians, normal people. Is it a bit more clear now, Deepan?
Yes, ma'am. All I wanted to know is can we add these sorts of extra
Yes.
information? So
Absolutely. So the thing is, it's not exactly extra. If you actually look at it, these are kind of things that we already understood while we were reading the steps, but we did not really think of elongating them. So when you are going to explain something, we only elongate certain things, or we only need to when we're given sentences. When there is a photograph, normally you get a flow chart in form of different photographs. Now, in that case, it is much easier because you have a picture and you can just describe that picture and you can mention all the aspects of it in your body paragraphs. But in this case, you need to, incur some things. You need to read in between lines and you need to take out those certain aspects and then write it out. So yeah, these kind of additions can be made, especially because there were only 6 steps and it was a very short, it was kind of short on information. So if you want to fulfill that 150 word minimum word limit, then you have to elongate certain things.
yes, ma'am. I wrote 149 words.
Yeah, so I was 1 word short. You need to add an article here or there.
Yes.
Okay.
Are they going to count it or just simply we need to do it?
So for Pranav, for computer based, they will actually see the word limit, word count at the very end of your screen. It will be there for you and for them to see. For pen and paper, normally I would say they would not exactly count it. I've never seen someone exactly count it, but we have kind of like, once you read enough tasks, you get this in your head. Okay, this is 150 words. This seems like a little less than I should test it if it is 150, or it is definitely over it. So we have that like kind of like a meter in our heads. कि इतना काफी है, इतना काफी नहीं है. That kind of thing. So
Ma'am,
that's why I always say, always go beyond 150. Do not take it for granted.
Okay, ma'am.
Mhm.
I mean, computer-based test, is this a hard limit that it should be 150 only? For example,
no,
I
no.
want
Oh no, that is just a minimum limit. You can write as much as you want in computer-based test. You do not have to worry there. They will just show you the word count at the end of the screen.
in my case, I have written for 149 words. So is this a like violation? 1 year less.
Are you asking if that is okay or not? Sorry, Diploma, I
Yes,
couldn't
ma'am.
catch that. No. Since the minimum word limit is 150, you have to make sure you cross that word limit. 149 is also in the red zone. It is not safe, especially if you're going for a computer-based test, because there it will be written right there that it is 149 words. Okay, so then they'll actually, the examiner will think they could have added an extra sentence. Why didn't they? Especially for computer-based tests when you can make additions very easily. So in that case, always go beyond 150 words. I always say this, no matter what kind of test you're giving, the minimum word limit should be crossed.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from anyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Ma'am, in my conclusion, I have written that overall the cycle of discarded paper recycling is a tedious process involving 6 stages. So is my conclusion too short or it's almost, it's good, ma'am?
It's good. It works. It makes sense. And I
And
just hope
using
that you're not.
ma'am,
Mhm.
and using lexicon resources in place of waste paper, I've used discarded papers. So should we use in conclusion or not? Like you said now that in introduction there's no need to use LR lexicon resource.
No, I didn't say that you don't need to use lexical resources. I said you don't need to use reuse instead of recycle, because that means something different. So you cannot change that word there. I did not say don't use lexical resources in introduction. It is important. Okay. So I meant something different. But yeah, you can repeat that word after a while. Like you can repeat the discarded paper or discarded pages. That will work.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. If this was the end of it, then I'll end the lecture here today, guys. So have a good day. Have a good night. Goodbye.